Okay, I think just in an effort to adhere to our time and kind of honor your presence, we're going to all start right now. My name, as I said before, my name is Diane Berry, and I'm one of the school counselors at Ashland High School. Um, you're going to meet the other counselors also tonight, and you're going to meet Jen Marston. We're going to go over that, our wonderful um, our career and college coordinator and Aspire Mentor coordinator. And you're also going to meet Rebecca Garamati, one of our assistant principals. So welcome to our first this year parent guardian night for sophomore students. We have a number of objectives this year that Brianna will go over, but I just wanted again to say that we're going to really try hard tonight to provide some good information and to focus on the positive. We want to hear all sorts of things from you all, but we are really seeing and recognizing some wonderful qualities and characteristics and skills in our students during this most unusual year. And we want to share a little bit of that out with you as we go along. So with that being said, we will have time at the end of this presentation for question and answer. I think that we will also pause a number of times at different points in the presentation so that folks can kind of ask questions about specific topics. And to do that, we'd love to have you do that in the chat. And then Jen Marston will let us know what the questions are and we'll try to answer them the best we can. All right.
All right. So again, we really appreciate all of you taking time out of your night with your families to meet with us and get some additional information and just some updates. So our focus tonight, we are going to give some updates on dates. And that includes, graduation, spring break, end of the first semester. And then we're going to go into talking about important milestones in the adolescent brain development. From there, we will talk about how students are doing with distance learning, and we will share with you some of the results that we got from the student climate survey that we sent out to students. And then we will end with our students' character strengths, talk a little bit more about the advisory lesson that they did. I believe it was last week, and then the BIA assessment. And then at the end, of course, we'll have time for questions if anyone has any follow-up questions. All right, so the Ashland High School counseling team is made up of 4 counselors. Carrie Phipps, she is our 9th grade counselor, and she works with all of the freshman students. Diane.
And as you know, I'm Diane Berry, and I work with students 10th through 12th, A through HA.
I'm Brianna Trevino, and I work with students 10th through 12th as well, and my alphabet is HE through N.
And Maurice Montero, O through Z, 10th through 12th.
And I'm Jen Marsden, and as Diane said, I'm the college and career coordinator, advocate, and also the Aspire coordinator, and I work with students of all ages and even Ashland alumni and their parents.
All right, and then Karen Bratz, she is our office manager and scholarship coordinator. So she will be someone that your students may be working with in the future when they are looking into scholarships. All right, so for school counselors, some parents and even students are not always completely sure of what school counselors do in the school setting. So we address 3 different domains and want to support students in any way that we can. So that includes anything with their academics, with social and emotional lessons, and then also college and career readiness. All right, so some important calendar updates. Feel free to either write these down or you can take a picture on your phone. So the first one is Friday, December 11th, which is coming up, it's this Friday, at 7:00 p.m., we will have the Winter Fine Arts Festival. Next Wednesday, from 2:30 to 4:30, we have the distribution center open, and that's for any students that need to, maybe pick up books or a homework packet, maybe a library book. And then December 31st, all of the yearbook photo submissions are due. And then moving into February, finals week, which is in about 6 weeks, will be the 2nd through the 5th. And the end of the semester is February 5th. And then we have spring break, which a lot of us look forward to, the 22nd through the 26th. Graduation is June 11th, and fingers crossed that it's in person. We can all share that. And then the last day of school for the sophomores will be June 18th.
Okay, so we're going to move now into something that I find really exciting and a big piece of why I think all of us here in the counseling office enjoy working with your students so much, even at times when it might be more challenging on the home front. But some of you may know a little bit more and some a little bit less about how the teenage brain is incredibly unique. It's really the way that it's developing at this point is different than pretty much any other time in our lifetime. And we didn't know this until about 10 or 15 years ago, when researchers started using functional MRIs to look at the activity in adolescent brains. So a lot of this information is becoming more common, but is still fairly new. So it's a pretty exciting area of research. So when you look at this image here, what we see is we see a prefrontal cortex. They're kind of focused on this front area of the brain here. And as you can see, this is a 5-year-old to a 20-year-old brain. And the reason that this is important to kind of take into mind is that we know that that prefrontal cortex, which houses all of our critical, what are called executive functions, those are our kind of decision making, our impulse control, our emotion control, our ability to organize, our ability to manage time, our ability to show restraint, caution, all these kind of ways that our thinking interacts with our feeling. That all happens up there in the prefrontal cortex. This is the last part of our brain to mature from infancy up into adulthood. So when we look at our teens, we can still see that that's quite green. And that means it's kind of midway there. So when we look at these kind of qualities or these skills over here, these executive functions, insight, judgment, impulse control, planning, strategizing, etc., it's really important to know that your teen still needs you to kind of act as their prefrontal cortex at times. That means we're parenting very differently than we did when our children were 5 years old, but we're still guiding, we're still setting expectations, we're still setting limits because our children, even though they're big and they're in big adult form, are still children, and they're still counting on us to help them with these really important processes as they become better at them. So in the chat, let me know if anybody knows when the male and female prefrontal cortexes mature. And Jen, why don't you just share some of those out? You're muted, Jen.
There's no answers yet.
No answers?
Oh, here's one. 21 for girls and 24 for boys.
Nice, really close. Keep going. Anybody else?
24. There's only 2 so far.
Okay, I'm going to share the answer.
22.
Nice, getting closer.
26 for girls and 28 for boys.
Oh, there we go. Maybe that's
Females and 26 for males.
great. So on the average, now remember, there's a lot of range for average, but the average young woman's prefrontal cortex matures at 23. The average young man's prefrontal cortex matures at 25. Now, the reason this is easy to remember is think about insurance rates for driving. And most of you will know that, first of all, boys' insurance rates are about twice those of young women's. And their insurance rates come down by about half at 25. And the reason that is because accidents decrease significantly. Insurance companies are, in the business of profit. So they're watching those statistics. So that gives you kind of a good reminder on our students' ability to, again, make good decisions, kind of show caution when caution is necessary, and be thoughtful. So these are things that mature with time. So this is the reason I present this as a positive, exciting thing, is that this activity is happening lickety split right now, really, really fast. And it's literally, we can witness it sometimes in the span of a week. We can see our teens kind of making these aha connections. The next piece of the adolescent brain, and this is all I'll be talking about in terms of the brain tonight, is just this concept of pruning, because this is a big part of what's going on. The researchers often call the adolescent brain a plastic brain, which is kind of, I'm not sure if that's a perfect description, but this idea that it's bendable, it's moldable. But really what we think of is we think of our children moving into adolescence with lots and lots and lots of little paths, almost like this brain over here, little tiny paths. And those paths that aren't used actually prune off. They actually kind of disappear. The paths that are used become thicker, they're more myelinated. And when those paths become more myelinated, the speed at which information is transferred through them becomes much faster. So this is part of learning. If you have a student who is playing the violin an hour every day, the paths during adolescence that are developing for that playing are paths that will become extremely myelinated and extremely fast. And when that student is about 60 or 70 or 80 and they pick up a violin, they will still be able to play it better than someone my age who picks up the violin and practices for the same amount of time. The reason being is that this unique period of time, whatever a student is doing a lot of, they get better at much, much, much more quickly than we do, okay? So the reason we bring this up is because this is exciting. This is a period of time for amazing learning. We want to be thoughtful as parents and guardians about how we guide that learning, because I'm sure there's lots of ways we can think about what our students are doing. If your student is video gaming for 10 hours a day, they're learning how to video game really well. And they're going to be really good at it. However, is that going to serve them? Maybe we want them to video game for maybe 2 hours and balance, again, other activities in there to be kind of developed over time. So one of the things that we're seeing, again, during this distance learning time is we're seeing students start to develop some different skill sets that we think are kind of have some silver lining to them in terms of skill sets that we're hoping will benefit them in life to come through times of challenge. We're seeing some kids become even more resilient. So that's a little quick overview on the adolescent brain. There's a lot more to know, but it's important to remember. All right, Jen, I'm going to turn it over to you as a quick reminder about what's going on with this realm.
So this is the realm that I live in, and where you and your students are welcome to come and talk with me anytime. We have a college and career center. For those of you who have never seen it on campus, it's located in the library, and we've been there now for 2 or 3 years. So it's really nice to have that space. And I spend a lot of time with juniors and seniors, but I love to connect with freshmen and sophomores and their parents as well, who are really, curious and starting to think about their educational pathways or career interests for after high school. So I always welcome people to reach out to me to chat. Really easy to do now with Zoom. So just some things to think about, as you're a sophomore, as it's early to start really thinking about what college you want to go to or what career pathway or educational pathway, but things to keep in mind in terms of goals. Like the slide points out, attendance is important. The more you're in school, the better you will do in your classes, the more you'll get out of the education that we're providing here. Course rigor is important. You want to challenge yourself. You want to take classes that are interesting to you. Sophomore year, you have a few more choices and options than freshman year, but come junior year and senior year, you're going to have all sorts of different options in terms of classes, AP classes, electives. And one thing I just like to really talk to sophomores and their parents about is some sophomores, as they get ready to be juniors, get super excited about taking a bunch of AP classes. And I really encourage students who are interested in the subjects to definitely explore AP classes, but you don't want to overload too much because it's a big jump from sophomore to junior year and having one class and then going to 2 or 3 and an advanced math class. So really keep that in mind, because you want to balance the rigor with maintaining a good GPA, and depending on what kind of school, competitive schools you're looking at, GPA matters, or merit aid, scholarships, that kind of thing. So I'm always happy to have those conversations with students and parents, but it's an important thing to keep in mind. Another thing, sophomores to be looking at is just to continue to explore their interests, both in potential career pathways. You can look at internships, volunteering, jobs, activities, community service. And we have a lot of different things going on throughout the year for students and parents that really speak to sophomores later in the year and juniors and seniors. We have college information nights, how to find an educational pathway that's a good fit. We start talking about financial aid and the role that plays in college. And I put in the chat a link to our Ashland High School college handbook. And I put that together every winter, usually right at the beginning of the new year. And it's primarily focused for juniors and for sophomores to help guide students and their parents through the college and career search process. So there's a lot of great information in there. It starts off with the junior checklist, but if you're curious, it has a lot of really great questions, a whole section on when you start thinking about college and careers, what are the kind of questions you want to be asking yourself? And this is good for parents and students. And then just to kind of keep it on your radar, in 10th grade advisory, this year we're going to be doing some college and career type exploratory lessons. And also we're going to have an information night about SCORE, which we're really excited about. It's a college and career platform search engine exploration tool where you can learn about your aptitudes and all sorts of exciting things. So encourage parents to look for that information night later in the year, and students that are here, when you introduce to it, it's going to be a lot of fun. Got a lot of resources for you. Okay.
Okay, so looking forward here, next slide. There's going to be some reflections on things that was said previously, and I want to kind of illustrate some of these points. That there was school climate survey given out about mid-October. The feedback that we received from the students varied. Most of them did respond. If you look at the pie chart, parents be proud that the 10th graders and sophomores were the most responsive and gave us most feedback. Okay, so good job for that. One Once again, this was given about mid-October. So some of these feedback results that we're going to look at the next slides might have been modified or evolved since then. So keep that in mind as well. Okay, so student stress level, about 707 responses, going from range of 1 to 5, 1 being no stress at all to 5 being extremely stressed. And the stress level was due to, like, the question that was posed was, how do you feel about distance learning online this year? If you look at the graph there, 1 being the lowest amount of stress and 5 being the highest, most kids did respond in the middle, 3. But there was a significant amount that felt a lot of stress this year due to the online environment. I'm sure as parents, you've noticed that. I'm sure kids have voiced that. We counselors have heard. And so we're very aware. Okay, so looking at mental and social health. Remember, reflecting back to the most stress right now because of online learning, more than a normal year. We also asked about how they felt about mental and social health. From 1 to 5, 1 is struggling every day. So this is a flip, so keep that in mind. So 1 is going to be the most struggling or most stress in their life right now, to 5 being they're feeling great. Once again, the bulk fell in the middle, 3, the green on the pie chart. So kids are feeling, it's pretty stressed, but also dealing with it as well. So they're coping, they're finding coping mechanisms with it. And then you can see 4, the red, okay? That's, once again, they're feeling a lot better than some of the kids on the other end of the spectrum. So most kids are learning to cope this year versus the mayhem I'm sure that a lot of kids felt when the COVID shutdowns happened in March. So kids are evolving, okay? Next slide, please. So here's something that's very positive, okay? Silver lining that we talked about. Do you have a safe adult you can talk to? Kind of surprised us. Most kids said yes, okay? That's very good that they have that support system. They feel that they have that support from the adult figures in their life, whether it's parents, adult friends, relatives, teachers, counselors, they do have that go-to. So I want you to keep that in mind. They feel safe that way, which is good. It's very positive. Okay, stress management, coping skill. Okay, so what do you do for stress management? This is one of the questions that was posed to the students. Some quick responses on the right, listen to calming music, procrastinating, which I really like that answer actually, which contradicts itself. So a lot of the responses though, if you look, I was really impressed with the students who answered the way they did. If you look through that, you might want to take a screenshot or take a photo of it. Some kids were pretty creative. But what we liked about the responses from the students the most was how easily accessible some of these things were. It wasn't like, let's take a trip to Hawaii. It wasn't like extravagant. It's everyday go-to things that they found very calming for themselves. And if you look at the list, some of them are just easily as breathing techniques, listening to music, going on walks, playing music, skateboarding, praying, watching Glee with my mom. That was awesome. I thought that was awesome. Play with my dogs, FaceTime with friends, work on my car, work out, journal, meditate. So we're finding the kids are becoming very, very creative with their coping mechanisms. Okay, so physical health, which is also important. We all know that this ties in with mental well-being. How has distance learning affected your physical body and overall physical activity? Once again, large response from the sophomores. Some very, very mixed responses. I'm not as active. Some kids find that they're more active. Let's look at some of these responses. Good, I've been working out every day. I golf 9 hours a week, pretty impressive. It stayed pretty on par. Not much has changed. Not well. I'm lazier. I've gained 20 pounds. Something to think about there. That's pretty important for self-esteem as well. I'm still active. I don't go outside because I'm on the computer. That's another area of concern because they're spending so much time online. I'm out of shape now. It's improved. I barely exercise, so no good change. I spend way more time sitting than doing nothing. Has made me realize that being active is more important than I thought it was. So if you're looking at some of these responses as a parent, how can you help your child with this? I think some of the things that we discussed was just making them shut down some of that online time, whether it's for leisure or because of school. Cut out some of their study time and just take a walk. Take a walk with your child. Go down the street. Doesn't have to be very far. Get them out. It's a good bonding time between you and your child. Just get them out there a little bit. And if you watch the news, they're saying that it's a lot better to be outside than inside with COVID anyway. So it's a good excuse to get out there. Granted, it's a little cold. Foggy is kind of cool lately. It's something new to me coming from the desert. I love it. So it's an excuse to get out there. So any excuse you can get as a parent, take your child on a walk with them, go out in the yard, go down to Lithia Park, do something with them just for a few minutes. It'll just make such a huge change in their lives. All right, next one, connections during COVID. Once again, student responses. Share an idea you have on how we can create connections with each other socially distanced and COVID safe, which of course we all know is a challenge at the moment. Some of the responses are FaceTime. There isn't a way right now. I hang out with friends on Discord, distance and mass picnics. No idea, I have no idea what to do. More breakout rooms and Zoom classes, that's a school issue there. I don't think we should. I think it's best for now that we are safe. Very conscientious student there. I like that response because they're thinking about keeping their family members safe. IDK, I don't know. Playing with them on Xbox, have cameras on during Zoom. I think that's pretty important that students said that because sitting in some classes, I've noticed a lot of cameras are off and it's kind of disconnecting for the teacher and some of the kids who are on there. So it's kind of nice to know that some kids are conscious of that. My friends and I use a browser. Okay, this is my favorite one. Okay, my friends and I use a browser extension called Netflix Party. We watch movies and make commentary. If my son was still school age, I definitely would jump on this one. I never would have thought about it. It sounds like an awesome time. Sitting on a Friday night or Saturday night with your child and having their friends all have a party together watching the movie. Great idea. And I think that's part of the reason why we did this is just to share some of the ideas that kids have so that you as a parent can just jump on board with them. Take a screenshot of that or a picture and then, create a forum with some of your friends on social media and get together with them. As a parent, I'm talking about, you can have parent night, invite your kids or create a little party that they can get together online with. Socially distanced movie night at the park. Might be a little cold right now, but not a bad idea. Wear masks, Zoom hangouts with friends and family. So some really awesome ideas that the kids are putting out there.
Thank you, Maurice.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I do think students have some wonderful ideas. We know they have some really valid concerns and challenges also. And that brings us to our next slide. And something that we've been thinking about a lot at the school is kind of this period of grief that we've all been going through in terms of a lot of what we're missing and what we feel like we've lost. And I think that we've kind of come to a point where obviously we're excited about all the news on vaccines, but of really focusing on again, what we do have, what is going well, and how this is an opportunity, again, for us to work really hard to see our students' strengths, celebrate those and grow those alongside of supporting them with their challenges. So one thing we did in our advisory lesson last week, we wanted to share it with you. And our advisory lessons happen on Wednesday for 9th through 11th grade students for about 20-25 minutes max. It's an hour-long advisory, and the teachers are usually presenting the lesson, having a little discussion, and then doing check-ins with their students. And we're really excited about this because we are wanting to continue the advisory model into our back to brick and mortar times. It's a real nice community building, kind of almost homeroom type structure. So last week, our advisory lesson focused on student strengths. And so we're going to give you a quick overview. And we talked about how everyone has unique strengths and talents. And we said to our students, let's talk about our character strengths. Character strengths are kind of interesting because it's not around our academic strengths, and it's not even quite our social emotional. It's kind of the intersection between kind of our aptitudes, kind of how we're hardwired, and kind of how we come into the world along with our social emotional development. So what we know is that our character strengths have incredible, when we focus on those, when we use them, um, they really have wonderful positive benefits to how we are experiencing our day-to-day life. And you can kind of look at the long list here in terms of our confidence and our relationships and how we manage problems and reduce stress and accomplish goals. So we went on to kind of explore the 24 character strengths that have been identified. This was in a big bit of research in the early 2000s. And 24 different character strengths were identified that were universally valued kind of throughout the world. And we had students kind of take a look at this chart here and kind of guess what they thought their top strengths were. So what we know about these 24 strengths is that we all have them, but we have some a little bit more than others. So there's kind of a gradation of strengths. And we, with this exercise, wanted our students to focus on their top 5 strengths. So we had our students go to this site called VIA. You could take a free survey. The survey takes about 10 minutes. We welcome you all as parents and guardians to go to the site, take a screenshot of this right now. It'll take you about 10 minutes. There's an adult version and there's a youth version, but the results are free and they provide wonderful material for conversations. So all of our students took this and then they got their results. And then in their advisory, they talked a little bit about their top 5. Here on the right side of the slide, we have just an example of a top 5. Obviously, there are 24. We talked with students about these kind of core strengths or your signature strengths, kind of almost your fingerprint of strengths, and how when we're using these strengths, we feel more energized, we feel like we're living kind of a more engaged, more meaningful life, and that we kind of brainstormed ways to use these more during this time. I've talked to a number of students about their results, and when I look at these 5 strengths, when we actually look at that list about stress reduction or stress management, many of our students have used creativity as a way to kind of cope and navigate these times. Love of learning. Many of our students have jumped on YouTube and researched all sorts of really interesting topics, or, they've worked on their skateboard skills, or, they've, found something, I've got a couple students who are doing incredible things with photography right now. Honesty is an incredible strength right now in terms of really speaking about how this pandemic is affecting us, or what feels good and what doesn't feel good, and that kind of thing. Curiosity, perspective. As you can tell by just looking at these are all kind of wonderful resiliency pieces. What we also talked about with our students is that when people recognize our strengths in us, we feel better, we feel more positive. So as parents and guardians, we really invite you to, again, ask your student what their top 5 were, and think about having those conversations and making a point of recognizing those. we are talking a lot right now about stress. We're talking a lot about anxiety and struggle. And one of the things I think is really important for us as adults to remind ourselves is that the way we attend to different kinds of emotions, we can kind of grow those. And we absolutely want to support our children and hear them and listen and brainstorm and problem solve. But we also want to balance that again with attending to what they are doing well, how they are strong, how they are resilient, how they persevere, how they're beautifully creative, or how they have this incredible perspective. Because being recognized, being noticed, being seen for those strengths is really important right now. Along that line, it's taking this yourself and kind of discussing your strengths and how those overlap or don't overlap with your students is would provide material for lots of fun conversations, family conversations. During a time when we're doing less and talking more, this is a good one. So that's a little reflection on something we've done that's focused on the positive. All right, moving on. Brianna, you want to kind of...
Yes. So just to wrap up, the big picture is for us to notice the positive, and distance learning is not ideal. I mean, some students are, getting the hang of it and really making the best of it. But we recognize that it's not ideal, and students really thrive off of having, that connection with their friends and their social circle. But many of our students, like we've, presented during this PowerPoint, are resilient and finding ways to cope and stay connected. And so if your student is, maybe struggling with staying connected or staying motivated, then hopefully you're leaving this presentation with some ideas on how they can, connect with their friends and cope. And then another positive is that our students are all really unique and have powerful character strengths. And like Diane mentioned, we invite you to ask your student their top 5, or just maybe go through their entire list. And then it might be fun to have, as the parent, to fill out that the character strengths and start a dialogue around that as well. And then does anyone have any questions or any comments? Feel free to either put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself.
We'd really welcome questions at this point. We do have, like I said before, we have Rebecca Garamati with us, our one of our wonderful assistant principals. We have 2. And she has really hit the ground running. She's, I don't know how many of you know her, but she's been in the district for quite some time. She worked over at Bellevue for quite a while as a teacher and then a reading specialist, then took on the principalship of John Muir. And now she has just been a wonderful addition, like I said again, to the Ashland High School staff. So she's here as an administrator to be able to answer questions that you all might have that we're less able to answer. So Jen, do you want to kind of watch our chat and
Sure. Do you want to maybe unshare your screen, and so then if people do want to ask a question, and then we can see more people too?
Yeah.
Sure. And Diane, I just wanted to comment that I did take the character survey.
Oh, you did?
I did, and I found it very enjoyable, and it was fun to learn my strengths as well as weaknesses. And my children are only 5, but if I had a high school age student, how, that would be a, fun conversation to have. And I also heard from several teachers that students were sharing and advisory, not only their strengths, but a lot of them wanted to talk about what they didn't score strong on and why, and already setting goals, like what they were going to work on to get better at those attributes. So I thought that was interesting.
Yay. All right. Let's see what kind of questions we have here in the chat.
There's none yet. I'm waiting.
We'll take comments too. We'll take
request-
suggestions. If we know that students have given us wonderful suggestions in terms of brainstorming ways to be better and to do better. And we are all working on it. We're all learning. We've all got a massive learning curve and we're trying, but we have a lot of room. So parents and guardians can also make wonderful suggestions. And we've been fielding those and sharing them with teachers, counselors have, and administrators. So please don't hold back.
Diane, should we put these in the chat or do you want us to just ask?
You know what? I think let's all kind of talk to each other. So yeah, go ahead and ask.
Well, I'm Jesse, my son is Uriel, and I'm just grateful for this forum. I don't have any specific questions, but it's good to see faces. And Rebecca, we've worked together. I'm glad you're on the AHS team, and just grateful for everybody.
Jesse, thank you. It's good to see you. It's just nice to see Palm people. Anybody else have any thoughts?
So there is a question of, will there be a replay of this available? A recording? Yes.
Yes, we're going to go ahead and load this recording on our website. We now have an AHS YouTube channel, which seems to be the easiest way to access these recordings. So yes, that'll go out tomorrow.
And there's one question, comment, understood that this has been focused on what's going well. What are you looking at for making improvements where there may be challenges?
So one of the things that, and Rebecca can jump in, but one of the things that we are working hard to do is to be flexible. And we have lots of kind of policies and structures in place for typical years. And we're really trying to look at individual student situations. And as counselors, kind of modifying and changing schedules, changing kind of negotiating less time on screen in terms of with certain students. I know that teachers are working really hard right now to reduce the amount of screen time. So our teachers are trying to really not take more than half of the 85-minute period for what's called direct instruction, and then trying to use that second half as what's called applied learning, which is more of some work time on classwork. It would be the equivalent of classwork, whether you're breaking out and working with 2 more kids on a project, or you're doing your own, first draft of a paragraph, that kind of thing. I think teachers are also trying, one of the efforts that we're making is to, and I don't know if all parents here are aware of this, but to know that we're trying to increase the paper pencil options. We know that kids doing a lot of their work on screen is not healthy. So if students want more kind of printables, we're trying to coordinate. We have ways to coordinate that, and we have materials delivery on Wednesdays. So Rebecca, you want to jump in?
Sure. Thanks for the reminder about materials pickup, because I have chatted with personal friends of high school students, or I've gotten a couple emails or from students or parents about a hard copy of a novel that they're reading. And I reached out to the librarian and said, because I understand that she, all the novels that the humanities teachers are using in 10th grade, that they made available as a PDF. And the last thing that some students and parents want is to also be reading the novel as a PDF. So I reached out to her and said, how can we make this change pretty quickly? And she said that they are all available hard copy. You or the student just needs to make that request to her. It's Amy Cork is our teacher librarian, and she can have a hard copy of novels and textbooks available at the next distribution day. It was something I was pretty passionate about. I said, if we don't have any, I will find it in the budget so we can get some hard copies, because I wouldn't want that for my student if they reading also the novel on the screen. So I just think a lot of parents and students weren't aware of that, and we are trying to make more paper pencil hard copy availability. So just let us know. And then piggybacking on Diane's discussion of the 85-minute block and breaking it up, we are doing our best to create time for professional development for teachers to discuss what they're doing during their 85 minutes and be able to share and collaborate, as well as administrators getting professional development to help teachers on how to teach in this comprehensive distance learning world. They're all first-year teachers again, because we've never had to do this before. So the pace is extremely slow with how to shape and form and learn and monitor and adjust. Because we realize, and teachers also realize, some struggle more than others with how do I recreate my classroom and do what I know how to do so effectively via the computer and via going to a website and using breakout rooms and breaking down a project in a different way that's as effective as it was in brick and mortar. And what are some of the things I'm going to have to give up? And for some teachers, it's a mourning process, just like it was for us with our children not being able to go to school and mourning that. Teachers are mourning that they can't teach the way that they did. And it's a big learning curve for everybody. And I went from the smallest staff in the district to the largest staff in the district, and the different, there's just so many, they have such different personalities, and some are quicker than others on how to monitor and adjust and change and adapt. So as an administration, we are trying to carve out time to be able to meet with them in whole group and small group to be able to support how they can do better, because it's new for all of us. So we really hold a lot of value in that student survey, and really we're able to take the positives and the negatives and get that information back to the staff, because that's why we're here, is for the students. So what they tell us is really important. So that's the most valuable piece and leverage to use with the teachers, that, hey, this is what our students are saying. How can we adjust and make things better?
I'm thinking there's some more questions here that I really want to get to.
Well, but there's a hand raised first.
For Gretzky?
Questions in the chat, and I don't know if Gretzky's got her hand raised.
Yeah,
hey,
and then let's.
Thanks. I'm Gretzky. My daughter is Asia Lieberman. And I noticed at the beginning, all those questions about how the kids are feeling and what they can do to feel better. And I think, the connection is the hardest part, I think, as we all realize with this. One thing that Paul Heward does, and he's such a phenomenal teacher, I'm so grateful that my daughter gets to be in his class, is he basically has an agreement with the kids. And he says, if you've talked to me ahead of time, and for whatever reason, your home situation, you're not feeling well, you're ever having a bad hair day, you can't have your camera on, that's totally fine. But as long as you talk to me ahead of time. But I think, I know it's so minor, but like just this connection of being able to see all these faces, I think is important for the kids, especially those that are, maybe a little bit more social or extroverted. Even, I think it's important. So whatever we can do to encourage the teachers to obviously not force, but to encourage them to keep their cameras on, I think that, might help these kids feel a little bit better about their day-to-day.
Gretzky, I'm so glad you brought that up. This has been a real challenge for us as the adults, to balance, again, the sensitivity to students who feel kind of almost tortured by kind of that vision of and self-consciousness of seeing themselves. And on the flip side, how we know from the beginning research that's coming out that students are more engaged, they're more present, they're more attentive, and they're learning better when their cameras are on. Students' esteem moves up a notch, and their spirits move up a notch when the cameras are on. So we would love parent support and encouragement. As you might imagine, once a critical number of students doesn't have their camera on, then many students will follow suit and turn them off. But thank you for sharing that note about how Paul Heward does it. We have a variety of teachers who are doing kind of different, they have different systems and being very quite successful, getting a good 80% of their students on, which is enough, to make it feel like you're seeing people. Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
Go ahead with the questions. in the chat. So I don't know if you all can see this. So can all the hosts see all the, or are they all just coming to me? Okay. So why they can't put a chat or a message to everyone. And I think that's turned off in these large group meetings because we've had some issues with Zoom Bomber. So that's why you can't send that to everyone. Oh, now there's a bunch of questions coming in. So I'm going to go back up to the top. Has the quarter already ended? Yes, the quarter has ended, but for us, a quarter is just a progress report time. I know some students got confused with that this year, since last spring we did have an official quarter to our semester because of COVID, but this year is just a progress report.
Let me reassure parents that the grade their students received was progress. It is not a grade placed on a permanent transcript. That is all it is. It's just kind of, this is where you're at right now. So if your student is confused or worried about that, please let them know. It's not anywhere permanent.
And so there's 6 weeks then more?
Yes, yes.
So there was one question on that February 5th on the calendar that this parent has is supposed to be a teacher in service day. So has that been changed? So that's actually a school day now for kids. I don't know.
No, that is a teacher in service day. So more details will come out of exactly what finals week will look like this year with comprehensive distance learning. But it will end, like the last day of that first term classes, first semester classes will be February 4th. And then teachers have an in-service day to get some professional development as well as grading. So then the new semester 2 start of classes will be that following Monday.
One parent said she really appreciated that we shared the insights from the students, and it's so inspiring to hear how strong and honest and amazing these kids are. So thank you for that. There's a question about, will there be a chance to do practice PSAT as sophomores usually do before junior year? Do you want me to go ahead and take that? So for those of you who don't know, the last number of years, all of our sophomores were able to take the PSAT on the national PSAT date in October. The state of Oregon paid for all sophomores to do that. Of course, we weren't able to administer the PSAT in October. College Board has set up an alternative PSAT testing date, which is January 26th. Because we still don't have students back on campus, the decision was made that we cannot do a large scale PSAT offering that day, but we are doing a very small number of students so that they have the opportunity to qualify for the National Merit Scholar Program. So under 30 students potentially will be testing that day, but no sophomores. We should have practice books like we always do high school. Once we're back there, I can get those to students at or during the distribution days for people who want to pick up practice books for the PSAT. But I am hoping that next year, come October, we'll be able to offer the PSAT to everyone. And I'm not sure how that would be administered yet. The state used to pay for all sophomores, and that's not happening anymore. So it's a relatively cheap test. Actually, it's so maybe we'll do that for, I don't know, not going to be, but hopefully anyone, sophomores or juniors who want to take the test next October will be able to test. And it is a practice test. And honestly, some states do not give the PSAT to all their sophomores. They wait and give the PSAT to all their juniors because they think that's a more appropriate time, because it is a practice test for the SAT, which most students don't start taking until spring of junior year. So SAT fall of junior year is really a great time to take it. Most of our juniors do not test because it's optional. So I'm actually thinking, and I've actually encouraged us in the past to potentially have more of our juniors take it. So I think that will be good for this year's class of sophomores to actually be able to test next year. Let me see if there's other questions. Thanks for the flexibility with the hardback books. Any more questions?
Jen, can you repeat how much the test costs? Because you broke out a little bit when you were saying
So the test for juniors is $17. So if you do have a student who's a junior who wants to test January 26th, it's been advertised in the Grisogram, and they should contact Maurice Montero. And any student who qualifies for free and reduced lunch can test for free. Here is a question. I wonder what strategies or groups are being created for keeping kids in touch with their friends that they may not have class with when typical school days create that. And now with so much isolation, they never get to see them unless they're in class together. Sorry if you already covered this. I could make,
So in terms of those strategies, I think we've brainstormed a lot of different possibilities. We are building some clubs, and I think we have about 8 or 9 clubs at this point. We've had suggestions to run kind of Zoom lunch kind of times for students. I think the challenge that we have encountered with that, honestly, is just supervision and I have to tell you, inappropriate Zoom bombing. And it is a reality. It's a way teenagers get to kind of, you know, prank and have fun, but it can have some pretty challenging effects. So we don't have an opportunity at this point for a lunch connection. I also just wanted to respond to a few of the questions. There was a question about late assignments. And a student typically being an A student and now a B student due to penalties for late assignments. I do want to let you know that there is an expectation right now that late assignments are accepted without penalty across the high school. I think that that's been something communicated just within the last few weeks to our teachers. So our teachers are kind of moving into that. And some are real clear on that and some are still adjusting. So if your student is having a challenge in terms of either accessing an old assignment that they still want to complete or feeling like they're getting docked for that, please let your school counselor know. We are here to kind of be those intermediary communicators and advocates. We want students to still come through the door with their work. If they're motivated and they want to demonstrate their skills and their learning, we want them to do that. These are unusual times, so we have unusual supports in place, okay? So I hope that answers that question. I also wanted to respond to the question around a student having kind of focusing on their least strong character strengths. And, you know, I want to remind everybody, I actually did that when I first took the survey, but teenagers especially are just developmentally more focused on sometimes their challenges and their weaknesses and have a kind of a heightened self-consciousness. So as a parent guardian, it's important to kind of listen to and respond to kind of that response of your child's and kind of talk it through, but then kind of move toward that conversation around strengths and notice examples of that and kind of help, again, guide and push toward that more positive lens. There was another question about time management and just keeping goals. Does a counselor kind of want to jump in there? There was a question about how do we balance. I'm trying to get to as many questions as possible within our limited amount of time. How do you kind of support your child with time management? I'm willing to jump in, but anybody can.
Yeah, I can, and of course any of the other counselors can, or a parent that has an idea. I would really, if I had a high school age parent, I'd really take advantage of the Wednesday and sit down and develop a schedule with their input on what works for them, because it is a day that they have advisory, and then there's office hours, and then a lunch, and then applied learning time. And only if a teacher has reached out and scheduled office hours or scheduled applied learning time, you know, bringing a small group together and work on a specific project, Other than that, it is student driven and student led, which I think is one of the hardest things when I sit in on meetings, is that there's more student initiation in this model than ever before. And these are still kids and they're still learning these skills, and they're not here brick and mortar for a teacher to say, hey, stop by today, or hey, a group's meeting in my room after school today and we're going to work on this. There's not that structure. So there's so much more initiation on the student's part that that parents really need to help with that process. So I think sitting down on and structuring Wednesdays for them, like, hey, on Wednesdays, let's look at your classes. Which ones aren't you doing well in? Oh, you're not doing well in math. So how about every Wednesday you contact your math teacher during office hours or during applied learning time? And then also, where do you fit in the fun? How about on Wednesday we make sure we're contacting, a friend, or you're decompressing and engaging in one of your hobbies on a Wednesday because there's a little more flex time. Or if I check Canvas with you and we see you've turned everything in, let's go for a walk, or let's go do one of your preferred activities. So I'd really leverage that Wednesday.
And I do think you can't underestimate the power of an agenda, even though they've got the whole calendar, that hand, eye, brain connection with writing down kind of what's in front of them, and kind of almost setting, those artificial deadlines and saying, I want to be done by a certain time, or I'm not going to get up at 9:25. I'm going to get up at 9 and get, 20 more minutes of work in so that I can be done that much earlier. But sometimes we, as adults, we create these artificial deadlines to kind of motivate us and to speed us up. And I think we can teach that to our kids also.
I also just want to add that, when I've talked to a handful of parents, if you have the space in your home to have your student maybe do their schoolwork either in an office space or somewhere besides their bedroom, so that they're not, motivated, or not motivated, but they're not wanting to lay in bed and attend class with their cameras off, and just being able to get up and move around the house, or if they can go sit outside. I know it's kind of cold, but and not everyone has that option, but if you do have that option, just encouraging your kid to come out of their room and just do school in a different space.
And one other idea, piggybacking on that, we've got a lot of students who are creating their own little temporary standing desks with a little cardboard box, because we know that getting up and down, we're missing those passing periods. When Maurice went over the physical activity piece, you cannot understate how critical it is moving from like the gym all the way up to the top of the humanities building during a passing period. Just that breathing, that walking, that talking, that going upstairs before we sit down and refocus again. I am telling students over and over again, the minute you get a break between classes, go walk up and down the block, stand, do whatever you can to kind of mimic that, because we are not built to sit for all of these long periods of time. So we're trying to artificially kind of mimic a more natural classroom environment, which would be broken up into sitting and standing and moving to a corner and doing a small group project and that kind of thing. So please encourage your child to stand and move often. And with those cameras off as much as they are, that should be easier.
Hey, I want to follow up on that a little bit too, because moving here from Southern Nevada, that location on the globe, right? I've noticed this when winter set in and the time change, it gets dark way earlier than what I'm used to as well. So I feel like this psychological shift where my day is shorter as well. So that's a good question, even for, the adults. Like I noticed the difference that I have less time in the day that I feel of daylight, which has a funny play on my mind. So what I find myself doing is during lunchtime, and I encourage your kids to do the same, piggybacking on what Diane said, is it's important just to step outside for a second, take a break from the routine of the day. I'll take a walk around the block real quick when I can, try to do it more often than not. Because then if I sit through the day just working on my laptop and answering questions and fielding issues, before I know it, when my workday is done, I have maybe half hour of sunlight left. And then I feel my day is over, even though it's only like 4:30, and I have all these hours to do things. It just doesn't feel that way. So I think taking advantage of those breaks throughout the day to break up the day is really important. And I find that when I go out for a walk, I feel more energized versus sitting inside all day long. So I think that's pretty important to as far as time management, is also managing the downtime as well and taking advantage of it when you can. And so balancing that out in the day. And I think it's kind of unique in this part that it gets dark pretty quick, during the winter months. And we all know that during the winter, people tend to be a little more depressed as well because you're stuck more inside. And I find that in Ashland, Southern Oregon, it's a lot warmer than I thought it would be. Like today, the last couple of days have been gorgeous. So I think kids should take advantage of that as well. And as a side note, I'm going to say this, and I've said this before. I've worked with some inner city kids before back home where I moved from, and those kids have a special place in my heart. But I'll tell you, parents, these kids are amazing. I love your kids. They're just amazing. It's always a please and a thank you, and they're so well-mannered, and they're just nice. Even when they're upset, it's thank you. So I have to give a shout out to you guys for doing a good job. I think your kids are amazing. They're awesome, awesome kids. So I'll close with that.
Okay. I know what I'm kind of conscious again. I really appreciate that you all have joined us on this Monday, and we're about 6:40 now. More than happy to hang out for another 5 minutes and answer questions or take feedback, but also again, want to be sensitive to people's personal time. Anything else? I think we've answered most of the questions. If we haven't, there is a question, and Rebecca, you might want to jump on this one. There's a number of questions about well, there's a question just about Canvas and just kind of navigating Canvas and PowerSchool. And I do want to say to anyone who's kind of having a hard time supporting their child with that, we do have some access to really quick little orientations to that on our website, if that would be helpful. Sometimes our students are our best teachers, but they don't really want to teach us that. But if you need some help with that, reach out to one of us also. We're not as expert in Canvas as teachers are, but.
Absolutely. I definitely would encourage, if you haven't seen in the Grizogram, how to be an observer in Canvas, so you're able to keep track of your student and see a lot of what they're doing and interacting with. And yeah, reaching out to teachers, reaching out to the counseling department. The question might have been how Canvas and PowerSchool are synced. And I know that it is not, there are additional hurdles and glitches. So I think the most accurate, from what I hear from the teachers, the most accurate look at what exactly the work that's been turned in and the feedback on what they have turned in, Canvas is your go-to place. PowerSchool is only syncing with the assignments that the teachers has told it to sync with. So there might be additional assignments in Canvas that it's not pulling into PowerSchool. So I often tell parents to take PowerSchool, as a, a once over, but really to contact the teacher if you need to dig in more about either why they're failing or why they aren't doing well. But I'd love to hear parent feedback if a parent Canvas night or like in-service for parents and students would be helpful, because I feel at the high school, it's so much more, students are figuring things out and possibly need help and support that possibly our super users could put together a parent-student 101, especially for students that get onboarded after after they registered later and didn't have that initial onboarding.
If I can briefly jump in here and just encourage parents that Canvas is really the platform that university-wide, like that's what they're using. And you know, my son, he probably doesn't appreciate the fact that I've come from it from UO on that side of it. So I know like the backside of building a Canvas site for a class. And so he kind of tries to pull a little bit of this and that. But, you know, if as parents, we can, you know, support each other to, you know, to like, this is an amazing platform. And it's something that the students, you know, if they're going on continually, not only through high school, but at post-secondary education, it's a platform that's going to continue to be used. And it's amazing. It is so cool, like pop quizzes and all this stuff. And we can really track what is going on, and not for like accountability, like we're overseeing it, but just to encourage and to, you know, see what's going on and to help the students navigate through these weird times, you know, with, I don't know. I think Canvas is amazing. I'm glad that we're using it at Ashland High School, and please engage. I just want to encourage, you know, and don't let your student, I know personally, my son was like, I'm doing it. I'm doing it, Dad. I was like, no, I'm gonna do this together. So I don't know if that's helpful at all. Just singing the praises of Canvas.
We have the same situation at our house. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My husband taught a college class on Canvas, and he was able to really help our boys. And he was very impressed that the high school used Canvas, and he goes over it with them. And same thing. There is a learning curve, but it's pretty incredible. And I can't speak for it because I'm not helping, because I didn't know Canvas. I would have probably done more if my husband didn't know it so well. So it's kind of his shtick. We do it that way, but yeah, it's working really well for us. So if people need tutoring on it, I guess that's the best way to go, because once you figure it out, it's really easy to track.
I think, Diane, you got some different questions than I too, because you have questions and so did you get to all of yours?
I think, let's see if I've missed, there's a few comments. Well, there's a question about, is there a pairing code for Canvas? And I don't even know what that means. I'm not sure if that's from Jody. Does anyone know what a pairing code?
Yeah,
Jody?
this is where, you know, it's like,
Yes, I know.
yeah, so this is where it gets funny, because you don't want to get involved with like the child's privacy, you know, but still they're children. And so it's like, so yeah, you can pair devices. And so this is what you were talking about, like being an observer. That's different than being actually able to be actively involved. And so, you know, it gets funny because, you know, I don't want it to seem like I'm getting in there and correcting my son's work, and that it's not his intellectual property, but like somehow I'm involved, because he does amazing work on his own. So I don't want it to ever seem like that. So yeah, so it's like, are we observing? Are we pairing? How much of it are we just allowing them to do their own thing? I don't know if does that make sense? Yeah, and you can like pair devices all around the house, and you can pair like in different places. So usually at university level, there's just one person who has access to that. But being that they're, you know, minors in high school, it's a matter of like, how much is the parent involved? And this is all learning, because we're all learning together in this COVID time.
I think there were just two questions that I missed. One was about if you had taken your child was doing a homeschool class, how that class was going to be transcripted. And the only way that classes can be transcribed is if they're being offered through some sort of accredited institution or program. I don't know if you were referring when you said homeschool to taking like an online course, through OSU or something like that. But unfortunately, here in Oregon, we don't have a way to take kind of your own developed class and transcript it onto our high school diploma. And the other question was just where to find the character strengths assessment. And that's on, if you look up VIA, VIA, VIA is the group that does that, and you can go to the free assessment. It's also, the link is on Grizagram this week. I think given the time, we've got a mighty few hanging out with us, but I think we're going to go ahead and close this off. It's been really nice to hear from people. And we are going to go ahead and have, we're planning, like we said in the presentation, we're going to plan a few more parent nights for each grade specific level. Our next parent night will be probably toward the end of January, beginning of February. We're going to be focusing on that whole forecasting process, where we're really helping your students understand the process of thoughtfully selecting their classes for their junior year, which is a year of much more choice, and helping you to understand that process too. And then kind of, again, understanding what the course selections are, what the difference between an AP course versus a regular course, a dual credit course versus a regular course. A dual credit is where you can get both college credit and high school credit. So we'll be going on to all the nuts and bolts of that. And again, don't hesitate to email your counselors with suggestions, ideas, concerns. We're pretty full, but we are all trying hard to get to our emails and our as much as we can. I know I'm missing some here and there, which I apologize for myself and for anybody else in there, but I never have a problem with someone re-emailing me and saying, hey, I emailed you a week ago. And I'm like, oh, thank you. Thank you for the reminder. So again, thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. We're in this together. We know it's gonna end and be different. And we're having confidence that we're gonna be better for it. All right, goodbye all.
I put the VIA character link in the chat too, if anyone wants to click on it or copy it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you.